Hey everybody, and welcome to We Watch TV. It is the podcast about the TV that we watch. I am Daniel, and this is yet another Supercut. For those of you that are new here, a Supercut is where we take our various conversations over the course of several different podcast episodes about a specific show and smush them all together into one long Supercut that covers that show, usually about a season's worth from start to finish. And this week, we're talking all about Severance, Season 2. We began our conversation on Severance Season 2 back in episode 92, Coffee Game.
Okay, guys, so you know what would have made our coffeeless day and my frustrations with FedEx a little better? If I could have just severed myself till we got to that point. Do you not agree?
Yeah.
Especially like everything going on in the world. I'm like, what would happen if I just severed myself for a bit, had an innie and an outie life? What do you think? Would you be severed?
I don't know. It's an interesting question. It brings up a real moral question about, is that other person a person with rights who, you know, they're going to be suffering for you? Is that fair?
I feel like you are a vibe check, because just like the other day over the weekend, you're like, you know what? I want to sever myself right now. So I think it really depends on Daniel's mood.
Yeah, it comes and goes for me.
All right. Well, if you guys don't know what we are referring to, we are referring to the Apple TV Plus show Severance. Season 2 premiered on January 17th, and we were excited. We had our pizza. Daniel actually went and got wings at another restaurant to go with the pizza.
I didn't like the wings that came from the pizza place. I wanted the pizza from the one place. I wanted the wings from the other place because I wanted to watch my special show and have a nice time.
It's very like Gilmore Girls, like the way they would always get food from different places. But that's how excited we were for our Friday night Severance back in our lives. We watched Severance about this time last year, so we have not been waiting as long as you guys that are OG watchers. And I can't imagine having to wait that long, because I felt like we had to wait long enough. But this show is particularly pretty meaningful to this podcast here, that it is back, because it is one of your candidates for the best thing going. Is that correct?
Yeah, the only main reason I didn't throw it in harder when we had that discussion earlier last year was because it only had one season, and a show really needs to show me something in season 1 to get it out there that quickly. I think you'd have to show that you can sustain it through multiple seasons before I will consider you the best thing going, because it's got to be going. And so if this first episode was anything to judge by, I think that they're well on their way.
Yeah, it definitely came out guns a-blazing.
Yeah.
That first scene with Mark just walking around the halls at Lumen?
Lumen, yeah.
Lumen Industries. So what did you think about the premiere? Do you want to catch people up? What happened last season?
Yeah,
first?
So, again, spoiler warning, spoiler podcast. We're going to talk about spoilers from here on out throughout the episode, not just Severance, but everything that we watch. So be aware, if you haven't watched Severance or Severance Season 2 yet, we're going to talk spoilers.
And skip to that next chapter. We do put chapter markers on for that very reason.
So in general, Severance, the basic idea is you have to understand the concept of an innie and an outie, which is there's a company called Lumen, and they have developed a technology that allows you to essentially shut your consciousness down and open up a new one within your own mind. And so your outie person is you as your normal person, but your innie is the person that goes and does all the work at your job, but you don't remember any of it.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be a job either. We saw examples of people that chose to be severed while they gave birth.
Right, exactly.
Last season.
Intermission from our outies here, our non-podcast outies. We paused the podcast because the noise that we heard earlier in the episode that we thought was the FedEx guy was actually a car hitting a deer. And we paused because then somebody came along and dispatched the deer with multiple shots. Which I feel like is a little bit of overkill, but whatever. So anyways, let's sever back into the podcast, shall we?
Okay.
So anyways, the story of season 1 Severance is you meet 4 innies doing their job, and they start to slowly kind of uncover the weirdness of the place that they work, and they discover a way to activate themselves when they're not at work. And so the final episode of the season 1 is they have activated One of them stayed in the office, and the other 3 went out to activate to try and figure out what in the world's going on.
Like what the real world is
what the real world is like, and we discover some very interesting things about them.
Because they don't even know anything outside of the
don't know
walls
anything.
of Lumen. Like their Ennies don't know any of that. And a lot of this curiosity came on when they had a new hire, Helly R, come in.
Yep.
Because she kept trying to quit and quit and quit. Then she would see videos from her Audi that was like, you're not a person. Like, you suck.
Yeah.
You're not going to quit. You're stuck. And like that, your Audi is making your decisions for your Ennie. So as Daniel said, at the end of that season, we've got 3 of them with the Audis. Mark W. Who is the...
Barton Fink.
Barton
I
Fink.
never remember what his
Bert?
name is. Bert, I think it is, yeah.
And then...
No, Bert is Christopher Walken's character.
Oh. Okay, well, we don't remember this guy's name. How good.
Well,
thank goodness we're not a TV.
I hope you're not
podcast or anything.
listening for the first time, because if you're a long-time listener, you know we don't know. Barton Fink and Helly R.
Helly R.
Mark ends up at a party with his sister. Of course, he doesn't know he has a sister. And his boss is there. And
his sister's husband wrote the book that somehow got into Mark's Ennie bag. And they were all obsessed with this book.
They thought it was like a religious
Lumen.
experience.
Yeah, when really his brother-in-law is kind of
a quack.
Means well, but sort of a nerd.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh my gosh.
His major discovery at the end of season 1 is that the therapist, Ennie, looks exactly like Audi Mark's wife.
Who we presume to be dead.
Yes.
And that's probably a huge reason why he chose to be severed.
Yes.
Because he was still grieving that loss.
Barton Fink discovers that the person he liked on the inside...
That's Bert.
Yes, is married on the outside.
That was
and so it's
tragic.
kind of just a heartbreak for him. And he also discovers that he paints a lot, and everything he paints are stuff from inside, from the Ennie world. So there's some weird, like, is there something subconsciously crossing over between the two minds? Yeah. And then the big reveal is Helly R. She finds out she is actually the CEO in waiting of Lumen Company, and that her Audi volunteered to go in to show that severing is fine and it's a good thing to do.
She's like the daughter, correct?
Yeah, the daughter of the CEO, and she's going to become the CEO because it's a family company.
And didn't when she goes up to give her speech, she started talking about how it's like actually a terrible experience and they shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So we obviously know there's repercussions. And then I think the season ended with Mark like looking at the picture, like you said, of Ms. Casey, and then it was just nothing.
And then they got snapped out of it. And season 2 picks up exactly there. Mark shows back up in the severed floor. He goes looking for his wife, it's not his wife, but it is kind of his wife. He goes looking for her and does not find her. In fact, the room she used to be in is completely gone.
And his regular coworkers, he has a new team who he's kind of like the classic, I guess, the old man. Yeah. And Daniel and I were like, who is this guy? Why do we know him? And we IMDb'd and we're like, okay, he is Frank Buffet, Phoebe Buffet's dad, who shows up in one episode of Friends, Sleepy Girl. And it was just the voice. And I think he does do a lot of voice work, but that's what we're just like going down the list and we're like, oh, that's what we know him from. So I had to get that off our chest because both of us were like, where have we seen this guy? But we don't really see this team very much. We see is it Michael Check? I always call him Milkshake.
Milkshake. Well, that's what they call him, is Milkshake.
What's up with this guy?
I don't know.
He's clearly not severed. What's wrong with him? I'm starting to think they took a piece of his brain out. Something's up with him.
I think everybody that works down there, something's
brainwashed.
off.
And they've got, please explain to me the child.
I have no idea.
Now they have a supervisor. So he's taken over for Ms. Cobell.
Yeah.
Who we don't know where she is because she kind of exposed everything at the end, but she's still got, she's 3 fries short of a Happy Meal. She's screwed up anyway.
Well, not just she's gone because she screwed it up. The company is pinning all of the things that took place on her, even though that's not what happened.
But she was crazy. She's just crazy.
Yes.
Anyway, everybody's crazy. So now they also have this girl, like a young girl that looks like a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so Miss Casey was of Asian descent. This little girl is of Asian descent. If you notice, she wears her hair
Mm-hmm.
and barrettes exactly the same way. I don't know if there's a connection there or what, but I'm wondering because that is an intentional styling.
Oh, it's very
choice.
intentional.
But where did this kid come from? I'm very confused.
And so I won't recap the entire episode, but eventually the team gets back together and they're taken in and shown a video to say, hey, you guys are famous. You changed the way Severance works, blah, 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 blah. And sus.
Yeah.
Sus.
And Mr. Michael Milchek, I can never say his name. I'm just calling him Milkshake Creepy Dude, the way like they kind of refer to him in the show. He shows them newspaper articles about how they're famous. Are you buying that?
No, not one bit.
Me either.
Not even a little bit.
Me either. So yeah, that's where kind of the premiere.
No outies at all. We saw nothing of the outside world.
None of the outies. None of that world. And they have to make the decision if they want to go ahead and continue to stay. They're letting them make the decision.
Yeah.
Okay, wink, wink. So they all start off and they're like, okay, so what do y'all see? And Mark explains what he saw. The other guy explains what he saw. Heliar lies right through her teeth. So that begs the question, do you think, and I feel like this is probably the obvious choice, and why they'd all get back together, that's not really the Heliar that is Heliar running the company and she's infiltrating because there's something off, or could it be that it actually is our Heliar and they've let her go back down there, but she is so ashamed and embarrassed because of what her outie does that she's not ready to admit that to the group. Which of those do you think it's going to be?
I'm sitting 70-30. 70% chance I believe that it is just the real person, the outie, infiltrating to see what for information. 30% chance it's Heliar who is just so embarrassed that she is essentially the bad guy on the outside world that she can't bring herself to tell everybody.
Maybe she thinks she could still tear it down. I just have to wonder. I'm the same way as you are with these percentages. I just feel like there's a reason why they're allowing them to get together, and I think a lot of that has to do with Helly. But that being said, I would love it if it would actually be the Heliar we came to know, and she's just kind of covering that up.
I agree. I still would need a really good reason why that CEO would ever go back in there. After what happened at the end of season 1, why would she go back on the severed floor and join and let her troublemaker of an innie join back in with the other troublemakers?
Well, they're already trying to plant the seeds of doubt among them. Like they're taking Adam, the one guy, he was the one that was doing the controls, so he actually didn't get to see.
Yeah.
But he knows he has kids, and I think they said, like, hey, your wife could come see you. You're the only one that's married. She could come see you. So they're like, and I don't buy that at all, but they're trying to like plant these seeds of doubt, and I'm really interested to see where this season goes.
Yeah, I am too. I'm interested to know because we never really found out what the work they're doing is.
Yeah, I think it's all one big experiment.
Yeah, I think that's the case. So it's like they're continuing the experiment, so the work doesn't really matter. It's almost like it's just a social experiment to see how far they can push people.
Yeah,
because they're wanting to push Severed out.
Yeah.
Into the mainstream.
That's why we saw the thing with like pregnancy. I think they're wanting to see how much, like, basically just like Squid Game, which we'll get to. I think this show is a huge metaphor about how you're not a person.
Yeah.
To some of these companies, you're just supposed to be a worker bee, and then when you die, they replace you. If you quit, they replace you. You don't matter. And I think that's kind of what the message this show is sending. Is that what you kind of think?
Oh, I agree 100%. Yes, that is a different way of, like you said, with Squid Games, it's a different way of going about it, but it's the same. It's really the same story, showing you like you are nothing to these capitalist companies.
Exactly. And I'm really interested to see where the season goes. Do you think we'll see the outies in the next episode?
We will see them at next episode. I don't know, because like this show, I don't know where they're going to go with it.
I kind of hope we do, because we had some drama with Mark's sister, because Miss Cobell had been like kind of helping be their like nanny, or their night nurse or something, and we thought she took their baby, like his sister has a baby, that brand new newborn. We thought that she might have taken that baby, which she didn't. But so she obviously knows what Mark's innie said.
Yeah.
So there's there's these plots that we have to kind of answer, and
Yeah.
I'm like, please, I wanted more. I was really hoping that Apple would gift us with the first 2 episodes, and they were like, no, you gotta wait.
I think the reason we're not seeing the Audis right now is because they're actually the 3 of them, the 3 Audis that are not involved with the company, are just being held hostage.
Yeah.
The Helly, hers isn't obviously because she's the CEO, but the other 3 are just being held hostage.
That asks me another question for you. What if all this time Mark's actually not left? Do you think he's even gone back to be an Audi? Do you think they're just keeping them in that building?
Yeah, they could just be shutting them down. I don't know. So,
There's a lot.
I'm excited.
Going on.
Just the first episode in, but I'm right back into it. I might need to do pizza and wings from 2 different places again this Friday.
I thought we talked about Chipotle.
Ooh, Chipotle could be good too.
Ooh. Do you think we are going to see any more egg parties or waffle parties?
Milchick was definitely bribing Dylan with a lot of different treats at the end of season 1, and then again in season 2, he's bribing him with like the family visits and stuff. So I think we'll see a lot of special parties at least for Dylan.
And we had to look up that his name was Dylan because I called him Adam earlier.
I thought you were talking about Adam, like
Adam Scott.
Adam Scott, the character
No.
that plays Mark W.
Mm-hmm.
So we continued with episode 93. What we're looking forward to in 2025.
Severance. Season 2, episode 2. Here's a thing that you can tell that we're so used to these short seasons is I have a note in my notes. I don't know if you thought that. I'm actually excited that it's 10 episodes.
I know, it's crazy. 10 whole episodes, man.
10 whole episodes. Because I feel like sometimes have been like 8 episodes.
Yeah, or like you're going to be like Agatha all along and just have 9 for some weird reason.
A very odd thing to deal with. But anyway, this second episode... Our first episode of premiere was called Hello, Ms. Colbell, and it was all about the Ennies. And then the second episode was called Goodbye, Miss Selvig, because that was her Audi presence, even though she knew what she was doing. She wasn't severed. And this episode was just all about the Audis. And I did look up, by the way, we can never remember the old guy's name, Barton Fink. His name is Irving.
Irving. Okay, I'll move on from Barton Fink because no one has any idea what I'm talking about.
Go watch that movie, though.
With that reference.
Go watch that movie and give us a fan mail about what you think.
Yeah, go watch Barton Fink and tell us what you think.
All right, Daniel, you want to catch us up with the latest?
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially is exactly what you said. This is the same version of what we got in episode 1, except it's the Audis, and I think you can immediately see that basically everything they're telling the Ennies is a complete lie.
Total lie.
The time frame is a complete lie.
But they said like it was 5 months, and it was like what, 2 days?
It's the same. It's like 3 or 4 days in succession with each other. They still didn't. They did not answer the Helly question about who is down in the Severance floor.
Yeah.
I'm on the fence.
I'm on the fence too. I'm on the fence a little more now than I was.
Yeah, we talked about it last episode, and we've seen some people talking online. There's people online who are like not sure. See, they're not sure from like, oh, is it Heliar or is it really the Audi woman? And we're on the opposite side of that, where we're almost immediately like, oh, she's lying. That's not Heliar. And then we were like, but is it Heliar? And she's just ashamed of her Audi presence.
Well, we
still don't know the answer to that question.
And apparently there's some like project that they need Mark to complete the project. So they drop that detail. And you see that like Helly watching herself. And I think she's like really like interested because Heliar and Mark kissed at the end of season 1. I think she's almost jealous.
Yeah, I think because her life, like she's high.
She has like a social life, and as an Ennie where she doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting.
And clearly she has pressure from her dad to do better. But like, so we know at one point she's watching, and they tried to put him with that new team, and they really did fire the other people. They fired Dylan, they fired Irving. And they made him think they fired Helly. And they were like, no, Helly's got to go back in for like the project. So that's where we're at. Does she actually let herself become the Ennie to go in there, or is she a really good actor? I thought what stuck out to me about this episode was Dylan going out to apply for other jobs, and they were like, oh, wait, you've been severed? Never mind.
And then he got basically discriminated against.
A doors company? And you brought up a really good point. You're like, the whole world that they're in, the Audi world, is weird. And I'm like, I think that's an intentional decision by the show to make the outside world robotic too, but it is a weird vibe.
Yeah, it's a weird vibe. I don't think it's anything more than that.
Yeah.
But if they went a direction where
Yeah.
the Audi world wasn't necessarily what they were really experiencing either.
That'd be cool.
I could see that working very well.
And
I think the main comment I would say for this episode was it was good, but I think they should have released episode 1 and 2 at the same time.
I agree.
I think that would have flowed better, and then we could get excited for episode 3 to see because really all we were doing for these past 2 episodes was an extended season 1, a season 1 of every show ever where you've got a cliffhanger. All it's doing is catching you up.
Yeah, and we had, which you could argue that's a reason why, again, a lot of people had problems with The Bear season 3.
Yeah.
Because it very much did the same thing. I liked it that they had the whole episode on the innies, the whole episode with the outies, but I definitely agree as a viewer, I think it would have been really nice to release those both at once. Now, I don't know. I didn't check the runtime, but I felt like the episode went by really fast. Maybe I was just really enjoying myself.
I think the second episode was much shorter than the first,
so it wasn't just that I was just enjoying myself. And can I ask again about the whole Dylan job interview thing? Was it intentional that they cast somebody who interviewed him that looked like Dylan? Because the camera even panned, and they were both sitting in their chairs looking at each other the same. That was odd to me. Was that an intentional choice?
I think it was intentional.
It was weird.
So I think what they're trying to show is like they were very much similar people. You could tell they were getting along just fine.
Until they found out he was severed.
Everything was good. He had that job. And then when he mentioned that he was severed, that was it.
That was it,
And I think that might have been what they were going for there. But it was definitely off-putting. And what's even more off-putting is those 2 actors, if you go look them up on IMDb, don't actually look like each other.
Oh, okay.
So they made there were like choices made in wardrobe and makeup and everything to get them looking more like each other.
And then we have Selvig Cobell. Like, do we think she's still working? Because they were like, we're going to offer you another job in our company. Do you think she's still in it at all? They didn't fully say, but she indicated like
she scoffed at it because I think she saw through it. I think she is correct in seeing through it that it's not really a promotion, but I don't know if she's taken it or not.
And she also kind of scoffed at Mark for going back. The Audi.
She did.
She kind of gave him some crap for it.
And she also threw some fuel on the fire for Audi Mark.
Yeah.
Because the simple fact is he finally confronted her and he asked the question about his wife. And her reaction is all he needed to know. Something's going on. He doesn't even mean his wife is alive. All it means is something is going on.
And now we heard this whole project thing.
Yeah.
I started going real dark. I was like, okay, his wife we know she was a professor. Then I'm like, oh my gosh, what if she's been working for the Sever the whole thing and she like faked her own death and she is, but that, I don't think that's what it is. I think if anything, maybe she was pronounced brain dead and they can put chips in brain dead people to make them work as like a corporate robot, so to speak.
Maybe.
That's probably more what it is, but I'm not really sure. I'm excited to find out though. So I'm definitely looking forward to the next episode. And do you think we're going to get the Ennies and Outies like how we used to? We're going to see both in the next episode, or do you think they're going to keep separating it?
I don't know what they're going to do format-wise. I really don't.
And it's exciting.
And it's exciting. It's good to have a television show that you cannot predict.
Episode 94, The Superb Owl.
There's a lot of TV shows out there. We should talk about them.
All right, let's do
For
it.
instance, Severance. We missed last week, so we've got 2 episodes of Severance to talk about tonight. Episodes 3 and episode 4. I feel like, for me, because we watched these at the same time, they really blended together.
They did.
And I'm having a lot of trouble recalling episode 3 because episode 4 was a monumentally excellent episode of television.
Well, let's go through the titles of it. Is episode 3 is Who is Alive? Mark, Helly, Irving, and Dylan search for answers. So they're all together again. I think that's where where they went. They would have been showed the video in the previous episode too, right? They are blending together. And then episode 4 is Woe's Hollow. The team participates in a group activity. I can't believe that we're only 4 episodes in, and some people could be like, oh, well, the pacing, yes, the timing is going slow, but the information reveals that we have had is a lot for episode 4.
It's a lot.
For only 4 episodes.
So before we get to episode 4, quickly, episode 3, Dylan got to meet his Audi wife.
Who I heard the voice
pet.
And immediately
Nailed it.
you were like, big guy. I'm like, what? That's Elizabeth from New Girl, who Schmidt 2-timed Cece with.
Yeah.
And we're really liking Schmidt and Cece still over Nick and Jess best. when you recall that storyline. They grew up a lot, both of them. It's okay.
It was a journey.
It was a journey.
Mark and Helly go looking for Mark's wife, and they meet the goat people.
Who want to see their belly buttons.
Yeah, that was weird.
That was weird. That whole scene was weird.
Game of Thrones lady shows up as a goat person.
Oh, Brienne of Tarth.
Yeah.
I like her hair dark like that. It looked really pretty, even though she was weird.
And Irving goes back to the art department to see what's going on there, even though Bert is no longer with the company. He gets some answers, and he has some conversations and talks about the paintings that he's been that his Audi has been painting.
We also see Mark's Audi talking to his sister.
Yeah.
And they're trying to do an act. He's trying to burn stuff into his retina so his any Mark can remember stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then he's met with that woman who we saw in season 1 that used to work for the severed people. And apparently she confirmed that Gemma, the last time she saw Gemma was alive, whatever that means. And she's going to work on, she said she's perfected it. So she's going to work on doing to try to unsever him what she did with his one coworker that unfortunately it didn't take.
Yeah.
And that died in season 1.
Yeah. And so that's where that episode leaves off.
Do you trust that lady?
I don't know.
Well, I don't know either. I don't know who I trust. I don't know if I trust Gemma, his old wife.
Before we get to episode 4, let me just say, and I've been saying this for a while, I don't entirely trust the Audi world. Maybe it's just the vibe they're going for, but there's just something very strange and off about the Audi world.
I could see it being an artistic choice to make it very clinical and robotic because we're all just corporate people, whether we're our innie or our outie. So I could see that being an artistic decision. But the more we look into it, the weirder it gets as well. It's weird.
So anyways, episode 3 ends with Mark kind of starting the journey of, I don't remember the term they used for it, but basically unsevering.
Yeah.
And then it's not addressed except for a split second in the episode 4 where they all go on a nice little hiking camping trip.
Well, you forgot another important thing to season 3 before we get into their group retreat. Milchek talks to the board.
Oh, that's right.
And he gets some gifts from the board members. They have taken paintings of their past board members that were of Caucasian white race and turned them into a black person and gave it to him. And I think he was, even though you didn't, he's a very robotic person. I think he was just a little bit freaked out by it. What do you think?
When he put them
there
away,
was a weird vibe.
Yeah, instead of putting them up on the wall, which I assume is what they would have wanted, he put them up on a shelf. And so that to me, that was a signal that that was not exactly the validation he was looking for.
Always talking to
Natalie.
The board. What is her name?
Natalie.
She kind of had this plastered on smile, I got the same thing.
Yeah.
And then she's talking also to Mark's brother-in-law who wrote that book that somehow got in.
Yeah.
And she wants him to write one, but to make it, not just.
They want to change some of the language around just in that, so it's not upsetting. So it's not upsetting to the innies, right? But I wonder if that means they think that book could help a little bit more with some cult activities.
All right, so you're chomping at the bit here. Let's get right into it then. The crazy one, episode 4, the group retreat. They all just wake up in a snowy, mountainous place They're all wearing black coats with hats, and Mr. Milchek has quite the set. He's got quite the look on, a white coat and a white hat when he finds them. And there was really no explanation about how they got there. That's how the episode opened, and that's where we were the whole time.
Were they actually out? Were they actually gone from the severed floor?
I don't think so, but at the same time, it's weird for what happened at the end. Why would you blow your cover like that at the end, which we'll get to if we weren't? Can you still, even if they can simulate that and they're still in the building, because I don't think they were in a real park or actually outside, maybe you can still get hurt even in the simulation.
Well, you can still be drowned in water.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm not saying it was a holodeck situation. That all that's from no, I'm not saying it was like a Star Trek holodeck where all that stuff is actually not there and just it's visualized but not real. I'm just saying something seemed off enough, and also they take such precautions to protect the innies from the outside world, and to take them to a place like that in the outside world where, anything can happen. Like,
we've never seen the innies like fall asleep, and they had tents.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they never slept before, which was a weird thing. So they march them through this place, and they're supposed to be like following a trail that one of the founders of the company did.
But then they see like themselves in the distance.
They see themselves in the distance.
Like holograms or something.
They're reading a book that they hadn't had a version of the book that they hadn't read before because it was not allowed for innies to have access to. And
then they got their marshmallows taken away from them. And finally, the creepy little girl supervisor is still there. Still unexplained.
But finally we get to the end of the episode, and Irving is suspecting something that Helly might not be Helly.
You're missing a major plot point. So we have the tents. Helly and Mark hook up.
Oh, yeah.
So based upon our reveal, that's weird and
that's
icky.
That's not great.
So as you said, Irving suspects Helly, who she's basically. So we have it confirmed now.
It's confirmed, yeah.
And we kind of figured this. I thought maybe there's a chance they could go the other way and actually have our Helly go back in, but we thought, and for the most part, we figured like that we're not going to see our version, any version of Helly R for a while. And that actress was doing a good job.
Oh, she's doing such a good job.
The eyebrows, you know what she reminds me of, and you are going to roll your eyes at this, but Nina Dobrev did such a great job on the Vampire Diaries when she would be Catherine and Elena, and there were some times where Catherine was impersonating Elena, and she would try to do Elena's mannerisms, but it was always a little off, and stuff like an eyebrow flip, a hair flip, just a tone of voice, and I feel like this actress has done, like, a very good job at like basically playing like two characters at once, like a character playing another character. And Irving, our dude Irving, like he had asked her in that first episode about like with Night Gardener, what do you mean? And he brought that up again, and then he's like, you guys are making goo eyes at each other, Mark, that's why you can't see it. So what Daniel and I were saying about the drowning, so they get their marshmallows taken away. Mark and Helly hook up. It's kind of creepy and weird, but we think that maybe the unsevering might be working because while they were hooking up, a flash of Gemma's face showed up.
Yeah.
So that
for
be
Mark,
taken.
yeah.
So then Irving just decides that he's gonna drown Helly.
He sleeps outside.
Yeah, he falls asleep outside, almost freezes to death.
And then when he wakes up and ends up finding Helly, who's also just wandered off from camp in the morning by that waterfall. She's looking at the waterfall. Now this is supposedly like a significant waterfall to the owners of the company.
Yeah, which we know are like related to her.
And they joke about it being like the tallest waterfall in the world to the innies, which they wouldn't know,
yeah.
right? But it was kind of a funny thing. But she's there admiring it. I think that might go back to the fact that she's not actually Helly R. She is Helena. And he finds her there, and they have a discussion, and he says that line about Helly was never cruel. Yeah. And then he just grabs her and starts drowning her, and that mill chick shows up, and she finally is like, flip the switch.
She called him
Seth. And then Irving says, yes, Seth, flip it. And then he flips her back to Helly R to get him to stop.
And that's the first time Helly R
has been in the season
since she realized that she wasn't Egan and was on stage being like, no, they treat us like crap. So that's the last thing she remembers, getting turned off, and suddenly she's waking
ice cold
up
water,
being drowned. Yeah. So that's what gives the ick of, first off, with Helly, impersonating Helly R, that like goes a whole thing of like consent from that perspective, because that's not the Helly he knows. But then her own, that's where it comes in that like, is your any a person? That comes in like the whole, like, even though it's her, it's not her in a sense. So like a whole thing of like consent. And I do really feel like if it was flipped and it was like Mark, like a man and a woman, like I think there'd be way more outrage over it. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Mark has something to say in this too, because he was not
No, I mean if Helly was a man.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there, but
doing
like
that,
Mark
I think
also
more people would have made a big deal about
Mark
it.
also is going to have some trauma from this because he thought he was doing it with one person
Yes.
who is not the person he was doing it with.
But what I'm telling you, if like Mark had been the person knowing the whole time,
Sure,
like
yeah,
Helly is,
yeah.
I think more people would be icked out by it. Unfortunately,
I think so,
even
yeah.
though it shouldn't matter what your sex
shouldn't
is
matter
for
one way or the
that.
other,
So that's a whole weird thing. And now I don't with that reveal. And I thought they were going to string us along for that a little bit. So now it's like we've got Irving, who they drug out of there. Who knows what's happening?
They
to him.
terminated him according to
Yes.
what they've said. So as far as we're aware, we don't know he's coming back. Now I'm
It
going to
said
go
the
out on
next
a limb and
episode
say,
description said the team deals with a loss. Are they
yeah,
talking about
yeah,
Irving?
like they have turned him off. Now I don't know if that means they turned it off and can just turn it back on whenever they want to, if there's something they can do to just actually kill the innie. I don't know.
So what do you think about that being revealed so early? Like I think we said 10 episodes. So
yeah, we still got 6 episodes left.
The cover's blown for Helly. Mark knows now. It's just, where do we go from here?
I don't know. I think they've mentioned multiple times that Mark in particular is working towards something
project
that they need to see finished. Well, I have if they've gone so far as to have Helena impersonate Helly and come into the floor, and now at this point, what has happened has happened. I feel like they're going to just bring Helly R back and let her go back in because Mark will just refuse to
work with
the other one.
Like even Selvig, who we don't think she did take the offer because she had a scene with Helly in episode 3.
Yeah.
Even she's like, we need to finish this project. So that brings me to my next. I have a couple different working bizarre theories. I don't know if any would be true. We know that Gemma, his wife, was a professor. I am almost wondering if she's in on the whole thing and that it was intent. I have 2 different theories with Gemma. One, that she's not, that she's actually low-key evil. And she's a professor, and she's like, well, let's test my husband to see the grief process, why someone would want to get severed, and that she's actually one of the driving forces behind the project thing. And then my other explanation is maybe they knew that she was a professor and maybe she was against Severance, so they were involved. They were like, she was in a car accident. They were involved in that car accident, took her body. Basically, she's basically brain dead, put a chip in her, and made her into Miss Casey. So I have those 2 running theories. And then my other theory that doesn't have anything to do with Gemma, where you talk about the outside world, we keep seeing the stuff like vegetation with the goats, is what if they are secretly pumping stuff in to make the outside world more controlled, and that's all part of the game. So there's my word vomit about some wild theories I've got going on. What do you think about my theories, and what are some of your theories?
I could see Gemma / Mrs. Casey being in on it. I'm not so sure about manipulation on the outside world. I'm more on the side of I don't know that we're seeing the outside world. But I will say I don't have theories, but I have things that I've noticed that are weird and I don't know how to put them together.
Yeah.
So Dylan's wife is a cop.
Yeah.
Why is that detail? What's the point of that detail?
I don't know.
Because Gemma was in a car accident and maybe the cop showed up. What's the new assistant?
They did prove that was his wife, though, because we were distrustful about that. We're like, what if it's not his wife?
The new
little girl?
She said before she came to work in the severed floor, she was a crossing guard.
Yeah.
Again, related to traffic and cars.
Yeah. You're onto something.
There's something weird going on here.
Fishy.
I don't know what it is, but it is very strange.
And I am excited to see where they go with it.
As am I.
Episode 95, Flowers in the Attic, White Lotus edition.
So moving right along in some other weird shows, Severance, episode 5, picked up pretty much where we left off. The secrets are out. Helena has been compromised, and we now got some more information about really how important Mark is to the whole project, because basically they're like, you're gonna have to be like Heliar again. And she was like, absolutely not. I'm not going to be that woman again. Those people tried to kill me. They're animals. And I'm just sitting here like, I was so disappointed because I had really hoped that maybe her being down there and aware of it, maybe she would start to view the severed people, the Ennies, a little differently, because I felt like she was jealous of the connection that Helly R, her Ennie, had with Mark, and I felt like I don't know. I didn't think she was going to come around and not be a villain, but I thought she might have felt more empathy. Absolutely not, from
None
what we
at
were
all.
given.
None whatsoever.
Stone cold, but they're making her. They're like, Mark's so important to do this project that the board is saying you have to go back in as Helly R. So now we have Mark.
Suspicious.
You and I were,
yeah. I think we were unsure because
very unsure.
So when we left, it didn't get touched on in episode 4, but in episode 3, Mark was working with that doctor to merge himself back together.
Yes.
And so when we come back to episode 5, at first we weren't sure whether Mark was being distanced from Helly because he didn't think he could trust her.
He was cold to all of them.
Yeah, or he was, maybe something else was going on in the merge, and it was actually outie Mark, and he didn't really know.
We thought
what
it
to
might
do.
be outie Mark.
I think by the end, with what happened, and we'll get to that in a little bit, I'm leaning towards he was just being cold because now he doesn't know who to trust.
Yeah, he was cold towards Dylan too. So basically, they wanted Dylan to mandate that they have a funeral, even though he didn't die.
And not a retirement party. Because they usually, when the Audis, when the Ennies leave, they have a retirement party. But in this specific case, because Milchick was forward with them and said, he's not coming back.
He said he's never coming back. So they wanted to have a funeral for the Ennie of Irving. And Mark was just like, well, make it quick. And we were like, oh. So I think I think the unsevering process is working. And it's making, but I think you're right. Like, he didn't know who to trust. We've got Milchick, more Milchick goodness. That actor deserves awards.
He's excellent.
And so does the actress playing Helly because, wow, talk about diabolical. So Milchick also had his performance review up, and I'm never going to think about the way I put a paperclip on a stack of documents again.
That was pretty good.
They, noted that. He tried to talk to Natalie about the photos. I'm starting to think that Natalie is always on the board. The board is always in her eyes, and that's why her eyes change and are so expressive. I think the board is always on with Natalie.
I'm trying to figure her out. I'm starting to wonder, is she just 100% severed? And all she is that.
I have no idea, but that kudos to that actress.
Yeah.
We still don't know what's going on with the little girl.
No, we have no idea. She really wants to play that weird instrument, the pheromone or whatever they call it, because she got real mad.
She and Milchick got a little snippy with each other, though.
Yeah.
Because she didn't want to have the funeral. And then outside of it, we have Outie Irving meeting Outie Burtz.
Yep.
We have Christopher Walken's character back, and he's like, you came to my house, and they talked about it, and we know he's married, or maybe not married, but with another person, but they're feeling that connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got that plot going on.
And Irving's also talking to somebody on the phone. He did a little bit last season. He has continued this season, and we've never really seen who he's talking to.
But we did see the drawing of the place that he was drawing. We saw that on the show, right?
Yeah.
The hallway.
So more importantly, he left a message for Dylan. He drew a picture of that that black hallway.
Hang in there.
And he put a note on it, and he said the last thing he said to Dylan was hang in there. And then Dylan sees that poster, hang in there, checks the back of it. There's the note.
Yeah.
We didn't get to see what the content of the note contained, but he saw the note. He saw the painting of the black hallway. So Dylan knows has information to go forward with.
I'm a little worried for Mark's sister and her husband, because clearly Lumen is like trying to get her husband, and he's basically rewrite his book entirely to fit their narrative.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is the most financial incentive I've ever been given. And she's like, at what cost? Now, another thing I want to say about this show, and I forgot to say it last week, and I absolutely can see them doing this, ending the season, maybe as your season cliffhanger, with Helly being pregnant.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see him doing that.
And that does a whole...
Milchick made it... When Milchick had his confrontation with Mark in the elevator...
Oh, he knew about it.
It was a very strong point to point out that he had those relations with the future CEO of Lumen Industries.
He was like, does Helly R know that what you guys did in the tent?
Yeah.
And so obviously we know Mark is very important to this project. But now, if Mark is potentially the father of the next Egan heir...
Right.
I think that sometimes that's a cheap ploy to do pregnancy things and storylines, but in this case, then you have the whole thing of like, who's the mom, consent, all this stuff. It's like you have so many things you could build off that. And I really do think there's something up with Gemma, Miss Casey, his wife, and that she was somehow maybe if she was not like villainy in it, somehow was involved with this supposed project, because there's got to be a reason why Mark is so important.
So let's get to that. End of the episode. Mark is leaving the work for the night. Or no, he's already at home. That doctor who's doing work on him is in his basement, but she said, hey, we can't do it tonight. Let's hold off. I think she's a little gun shy because of what happened the last time she tried this. So Mark goes up his steps and he starts phasing in and out of his house versus Lumen. I have a comment to make about that, but I'll describe the scene first. And as he's going up the steps, he's in Lumen, then he's at his house, then he's at Lumen, and he finally gets up to the top of the steps and he's looking down the hallway. He turns around, he sees Miss Casey behind him, who is his wife.
Mark, your outie is,
or
your innie is, where she's like talking about like what all these like things that he is.
Yeah, and so in my mind, that confirms for Mark. He and his sister outie Mark and his sister had been trying to answer the question, what does she's alive mean? Which is the last thing he said at the end of season 1. I think this solidifies in his mind what that meant.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I had totally forgotten about that scene, because I was so fixated on a minor detail where he's like, we don't have any eggnog, probably because it's not seasonal. And Daniel's always making comments about how weird the outside world is. And I'm like, why would you want eggnog? Like, it seems like it's perpetually winter. And then, like, I was so fixated on the eggnog comment. I was like, what a weird beverage to ask for at someone's house.
Yeah, it's a strange thing to ask for. I will note, so I've seen some TikToks, and the outside world, I'm not sure what to make of it right now. So first of all, several people on TikTok had noticed that in this season, documentation has been on screen long enough for us to see people's addresses and their state abbreviations.
Oh.
PE. PE is not a state.
I was like, I don't know what state is that.
There is no state in our current...
Because PA is Pennsylvania, right?
There's no state in our current allotment of states.
Are we in the future? Is this some kind of dystopian universe?
Yeah, so I'm wondering if it's a dystopian universe. But then, so I want to get back to Mark seeing his wife and the phase switching between Lumen Industries and his house. That could have been them trying to display to you through the visual medium that is television the hallucinations that are happening as he's beginning to merge Mark S and outie Mark together into one person. Or it could be revealing to us something else about the nature of Mark's entire existence.
Are we having like us a Truman Show on our hands where everything has been going? I just want to know. I want more of Milchek, because I think he's the best character.
He is so excellent. The actor that plays him is doing such a great job of putting layers to his character that without saying anything, he's just layering him. I think. I do want to go back to Natalie, the actress that plays her, is also excellent.
They're all
she
so
says
good.
so much without her eyes alone when he's talking to her about those paintings, and then she just completely ignores it. Everybody's doing a great job. But I agree. I think we're going to get more Milchek. We did not get any. What's her Corbell. Cobell this episode.
Yeah. I think she's got some screws loose. She's about 3 fries short of a Happy Meal, regardless of what's going on.
Yeah, I know. I wonder. I almost wonder if we don't see her again until the end of the season.
We'll see.
And she comes in. She wants to be in charge.
Now. Yeah.
She wants to be in charge of the MD floor.
And she has a worshiping thing.
Yes, and I don't think she has a lot of respect for Helly. I think Helena. I'm sorry for Helena, and I think she has to do what Helena says only because Helena is an Egan.
Yeah.
But I think that Helena might screw up enough by the end of this season to get herself demoted, and they put Mrs. Corbell back in charge of the whole Severance.
The whole outside world thing, those theories could come. Why do they have the goats? Why are they doing all this testing inside? There's a lot that could come into play with that. A lot of stories that they can tell. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next.
I saw
for
one
sure.
theory that I think has some weight to it, basically suggesting they're trying to figure out a way to bring back their original Egan, Keir Egan, the original founder of the company,
Like bring him back to life.
with all of his memories into a new vessel body.
I hate that.
I know. I hate that. I hate that too. I do
I do
too.
not like that.
I do not like that. But they do have a lot of worship of that character,
Yeah.
and so I
It's
could
the tallest waterfall.
yeah.
That's it.
So I could see that being a plot point, but I kind of don't like it.
You know all the TikToks lately of the Kendrick Lamar like Not Like Us dance?
Yes.
Somebody put that over the episode where Milchek's dancing around. It was perfect. It was
from
perfect.
season 1, yeah. So anything else for Severance?
I think that's about it for Severance for now. I'm really looking forward to seeing where they go with it, and I think it's about to get a little crazy.
I mean, this show's always been crazy, but yeah, I think I enjoy. Apple seems to be giving their shows freedom to just kind of do what they want to do and let them be the creative outlet they want to be. And I think that you end up getting stuff like this because of it. And Apple has been less trigger happy to pull shows. And so I don't think they've announced season 3 Severance yet, but I can't imagine with 5 episodes left we get any kind of resolution to what's going on here.
Oh yeah, I can't see that either.
Like, I just don't see it. I don't see it happening. So I will be interested to see how they wrap this season up and what kind of things. What somebody online said, and I agree. Every episode they give us more information, and it only makes the mystery deeper. Like we get a little bit more, but it's like so confusing.
Yeah,
the information is so confusing.
Let us see your belly button.
Yeah,
what?
The information is so confusing that it's like they're giving us more, and it doesn't. But it's not. The puzzle isn't getting any closer to being done.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Episode 96. That is Rapunzel.
So if you've had to sever yourself to get through the beginning podcast because you are one of the people that did not want us to talk about Disney or Special Forces, now we're going to talk about our next show, Severance. If you know, you know. So we watched episodes 6 and 7 of Severance, and what a ride.
This is the best show on television.
You're going to put it above The Bear?
Yeah.
See, I'm still thinking Hacks for
the
me.
The reason I
need
didn't say The Bear during our or Severance during our deliberations last time we had them is because we didn't know. It only had 1 season, and we weren't sure how they were going to come out in season 2. And folks, they have come out. They are strong. They are powerful. Season 2, episode 7.
Oh, it was beautiful.
Maybe the best episode of television ever.
Okay, I'm not going to go as far as say that. That's a little much. But you're willing to say that when we still have a few episodes left. Because it's
correct. Yes, I am.
Season.
Yes, without hesitation.
So,
I'm willing to say that.
Episode 6, I think, was more about Mark getting like his reintegration. His sister now finds out what they're doing. Honestly, I can barely remember.
He and Helly got it on.
Oh, yeah. Like the actual, yeah.
And it was a really awkward situation.
That was weird.
Yeah.
But the reason why episode 6 is slipping my mind because you said episode 7 was so good. We finally got information on Gemma, his wife, what she's doing. It seems to me they're holding her like captive.
Yes, absolutely.
Down there. Like she started to see this guy, Robbie Benson, who's the voice of the Beast from Beauty and the Beast, people. What? He like plays this doctor and we assume she's going to him for fertility treatment. So my question is this. When she signed up for the fertility treatments, did she sign up knowing what she was doing, or did they literally like convince her or coerce her into joining this program? Because it seems to me they'll send her to, she has multiple different personalities. She has one that, imagine waking every time you open your eyes, you're at the dentist.
That's all you do for a couple hours.
Hellscape life is that. There's one, every day it's Christmas and you have to write Christmas cards.
Yeah, until your hand hurts.
Casey. Like, so they're doing different things with her. Like, how do we think she got involved?
I don't know. I'm along for the ride at this point, but the way they wove so they gave us background on Mark and Gemma and how they met.
Yeah.
They gave us updates on what Mark and Jim are doing right now, because Mark is really suffering through the process of reintegration, and Jim has been in this purgatorial hell for...
And she wants to see Mark.
Yeah, and then she gets told by the guy, oh, he remarried last year and has a kid.
Because we do see regular Gemma.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Yes, which is even more confusing as to how she got there, because we thought she died in a car accident, and Mark even made a comment in season 1, I verified the body.
Yeah.
So it's they're going to need to explain some more.
Yeah.
But the way they wove this episode together with the cinematography and the edits and the cuts and everything.
It was great.
It was beautiful. The way they used music, everything. I think saying best individual television episode ever is really difficult because taste comes into a lot of that.
Yeah.
It's an all-timer.
Yeah, it's really good.
It isn't when you point back and think about a show, I'm going to think about this episode.
See, I always think about the episode with the suitcase on Mad Men, with Peggy and Don in the suitcase.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the when I think, and that it's not even like you say taste, because that's not from a beautiful, but from a storytelling perspective.
Right. Yeah,
that's an episode I always remember. So, yeah, I want to know why she's down there. I have a lot of questions. I need to point it out, or I'd be remiss. Mark, pre-severed life, looking good, looking good. Wow, bravo. So I really want to know, like, this doctor, like, clearly is shady. Like, at one point he's playing a dentist, then he's pretending to be her husband. Like, I want to know if she thought she was signing up for, like, a way to help conceive a child, and I want to know if she knew what she was doing, or if they actually captured her and promised she'd see Mark later.
I think the fact that she's asking about Mark and they're lying to her about what's happened to him suggests that she's not there, like,
willingly.
Like, the wreck was, in my opinion, I believe the car wreck was put on by Lumen to capture her, and she's down there, and they've given her some fake story about how they're trying to resuscitate her or something.
But
I don't know.
Then they said something weird. They said so the two guys are talking, like the fake doctor and this other guy, and they're like, well, when Cold Harbor or whatever is complete, that's Mark's project, then we're going to get rid of her.
Yeah.
I need to know about that. And Daniel, I looked. There are 10 episodes of Severance, and the final episode, according to IMDb, is titled Cold Harbor.
Do you remember when early in the first in this episode where they asked her, what would scare you more? Suffocation or drowning?
Yes.
And she said drowning.
Yeah.
I know what's a harbor. I'm worried. I'm worried.
The vibes aren't there.
I'm very worried.
Episode 97, Spring Forward.
Next up, we watched episode 8 of Severance.
Yes.
AKA the episode that everybody complains about.
Yeah, and I still love Severance. I think that if I was watching this the way I watched Severance last season, where I had all the episodes at once, I wouldn't have even blinked about this. And I do think this episode, because let's call it what it was focused on Mrs. Cobell. It was basically, we only saw Mark at the very end. And I think it was essential to the story that they're telling, because we did learn a lot about her and some of her intentions.
And world building as well.
Yeah, because we got to kind of see what a place was like that was run by Lumen, and then Lumen left, and it's really in disarray and terrible and almost like third world-ish and just awful. But I think they could have taken fragments of this and sprinkled it in other episodes. Like, we were so happy that we were getting a 10-episode season. This episode, while it wasn't filler because it did serve a purpose, I felt like all weekend that I didn't actually watch Severance. And I'm going to say that. And I don't think that makes me a hater. I just completely being honest about it.
No, I think there's a couple points to that. Like, first, this was the shortest episode of the season by far. It was only like a 37-minute episode. And it just, it really felt completely disconnected from everything. Because it was.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I understand what they're doing with... So, spoilers for everybody watching Severance. The big reveal of this episode, really, the piece of information they wanted you to get out of this episode was Harmony Cobell is actually the person that came up with the severance procedure.
And not only that, they made a comment in a previous episode, like, she's a soldier. She was raised by them.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah,
it
literally.
Seems to me like they handpicked kids, forced them into labor, which now it makes sense why we have the little girl that's working with Mr. Milchek.
Yeah.
And so she was chosen as a child to go work for Lumen. So we had that reveal as well.
And so because she's but
it's like Ross's Jurassic Park napkin, only real.
But she came up with it, but she was convinced
Do you
by
remember?
yeah.
Ross invented came up with the idea for Jurassic Park. Don't make me show the napkin.
I did. So anyways, so she was convinced by Lumen, brainwashed by Lumen to, say it was for the better. Nobody gets credit for the good works, even though everybody now, including Helena, credits her father for coming up with the severance protocol.
Did they invent the god within the company, Kier? Or is this just a god-like space?
Kier is the original founder of the company.
Okay, because
he's the one they were telling the story about when they went to the retreat.
Because they pray to Kier.
Yeah, Kier Egan is the original founder of the company. I think what they're trying to do is bring Kier Egan back from the dead, and I think that's
a good theory.
Gemma is their first prototype.
Yeah,
I think she actually died. And they brought her back. So now we're trying to figure. So now
do you think they were involved in her death then? Because in
that
flashback episode, we saw the guy that's working with Lumen, like her doctor. That was the doctor at like the fertility clinic. So do you think they planned the whole thing?
Yes, I do. I think
Why
that's
was she
what's happening.
chosen? Why do you?
I don't know, but so it was an important information. But I agree with you. Like they could have spliced this in with, give us a 50-50 episode where half of it's this and half of it's, our crew back at Lumen having their shenanigans.
I just didn't feel like I got my severance fix from it. And I know that Patricia Arquette she's done a lot of, she's been nominated for Academy Awards. I don't know if she's won anything, but she's been nominated for a lot of awards. So I know that like bringing her in, like she's not just going to have a bit role, but I'll be honest with you, I find her the least interesting. I would rather even see his brother-in-law interact more. But Milchek, like if they had given me like a Milchek, what's Milchek's like when he's not at Lumen? What's his day like? I would have been way more interested in that like kind of one-off episode.
Yep.
Because he is the most interesting character, for better or worse.
You said it earlier in the episode. 2 years from now, somebody watching this show without any pre-knowledge is going to blow through this episode, and they're not going to think anything of it because they can go right on to the next episode.
And it is relevant to the story.
Yeah,
it's not like where they had that episode of Stranger Things where Eleven goes and finds like her sister that we've never heard about since.
Right.
That just seemed like why did they do this plot? Like this actually, like the story was important. I just feel like the execution wasn't my favorite.
That's correct.
All right. Anything else you want to say about Severance?
No, I'm looking forward to the last 2 episodes. I think they're going to probably put their foot on the gas here in episode 8.
I hope so.
Or 9 and 10 and really blow our socks off. And
I don't want them to have another kind of like quieter focusing episode and then finale to be bananas.
Yeah.
I want the last 2 episodes to be
I do think it's going to be difficult for them to recreate the tension of the season finale from season 1. I think that was an all-time great like season finale. But I'm expecting a lot.
In episode 98, we had a crash out, but also continued to talk about Severance in March Madness Crash Out.
Well, let's switch over to Apple TV here real quick.
Speaking of stress, Devour Feculence.
Episode 9 of Severance, season 2, which we're finally back to seeing what everybody. We took a break last week to see some backstory on. What's her face? Miss Cobell. We're back to seeing what the gang is up to.
And it was a wonderful, amazing episode. Why don't you tell us what Devour Feculence means if people haven't put context clues together?
It means eat shit, Mr. Drummond.
Mr. Milchek's Crash Out, I think, might be better than my March Madness Crash Out. And he is my favorite character in the show, for better or worse, because he's definitely villainy, but I don't know if he's necessarily full-blown villain like the Egans. Yeah. And it's just, I don't know what it is, that actor, the delivery, that entire scene. I felt like we were both, like, I'm pretty sure I was clapping, like audibly clapping. All right, so go ahead and circle us back. Start of the episode. that kicks off with Mark, and they're meeting up with Mrs. Cobell, Mark and his sister.
We get a brief opening conversation between Helena Egan and her father, which was just off-putting and strange.
That was odd. The way she was eating it, no one can make. You always make fun of the way I eat things. She was eating a deviled egg weird. Or no, a hard-boiled egg.
And she also said something that I didn't pick up until after seeing some TikToks on it, that she said we're having somebody with a last name of B taken care of, which I think we should interpret that that's Irving.
Yeah.
And so later in the episode, we see Christopher Walken pick him up, and we find out that Christopher Walken, essentially, his character was either a strong man that takes people out, or at least he drives them to the place where they're going to be taken out. But he chooses instead.
That was sad.
He chooses instead to take Irving over to the train station and give him an opportunity to try and escape.
What about chemistry, though, with that ship?
Oh, man, gosh. That is just like...
Top notch.
Top
I think
notch.
they have more chemistry than Mark and Helly. What about you?
Yeah, the actors, Christopher Walken and I can't remember his name.
Barton Fink.
Barton Fink, yeah. Their chemistry is off the charts.
Yeah.
So we got that going on. Mark and his sister meet up with Cobell and kind of have a conversation about what can we do here. And they don't really accomplish much.
They're on their way to one of the birthing cabins that you could go to if you were severed and you didn't want to, experience the pain of child labor. And they know that if they take him into that cabin, they can wake up his innie.
Yep.
So we kind of, I felt like that he had to call in sick to Mr. Milchek, because they're all angry with Milchek, like, where the heck is Mark? Where the heck is Mark? So Milchek's dealing with all that while also having Mr. Drummond down his back. And basically Mr. Drummond's like, this is all your fault. And that's when we got I've said it like 50 times, you say it.
Devour feculence, yeah. Because essentially what Milchek says is, hey, Drummond, I'm responsible for the severed floor. You're responsible for everything outside the severed floor.
Yeah.
So Mark not showing up to work is not my problem.
Exactly.
That's your problem.
Exactly.
So I'm interested to see where that leads.
And then Helly's trying to figure, what's Helly? Helly's trying to
Helly got
hang in there, Dylan.
Yeah, Helly got the note from Bert,
Irving.
or from Irving, and she is attempting to memorize the map that he wrote for her on how to get to the black elevator that takes you down to a different floor. And we know that Gemma is on that floor.
Yes.
So it was a setup episode, but it was a good episode. But it leads off with her down there on the severed floor memorizing the map. Somebody approaches her from behind, and we think it's Milchek at first, just trying to be like, probably like, hey, why are you still here? But in the very last moments, it's revealed it's actually her father,
creepy daddy,
and he says, "You tricked me," addressing her as if they've spoken before.
Yeah.
So that's where they left it.
Weird. Oh, and speaking of crashing out, Dylan.
Oh yeah.
Basically
Can't forget
kissed whatever his wife's name is. We just call her Elizabeth from New Girl. And she finally came clean to Outie Dylan, who got mad about it and was like, no more. Because it's going back to the thing of your innie and your outie. Are they you? Are they two different people? I really think that my innie and outie would hate each other.
I mean,
don't you think so?
I think so.
I feel like the stronger your personality is, and I can admit it, if you guys haven't noticed, I have a strong personality. Sorry. I feel like we would not get along. Do you think you would get along with your innie outie, or would you just be more like Mark?
I'd probably be more like Mark. I don't know. But it goes to the central themes of the show, which is like, what makes you you?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it just your memories and your lived experience that makes you you? Is that it?
So is Dylan done? They showed him turning in his stuff. This is our Dylan that we've gotten to come to know, any Dylan. It's almost like he's essentially like offing himself if he never goes back in that building again.
When you request, the request he's made is essentially a suicide.
Did we see him completely walk out of the building?
No, we saw him get on the elevator and the elevator shut, and we don't know what happens after that.
I'm guessing we'll see him again.
And again, we also have to remember that Outie Dylan really needs that job.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not just as easy, because they said we won't see you again unless your request is denied. So it's not just as easy as quitting for the innies.
Exactly. So what do you think was going on with the whole thing to bring in the wives? I felt like they thought they could manipulate Dylan for their good,
they did.
And it backfired.
It backfired for sure, yes.
So much. So let's see here.
Ah.
We have the question of the little girl. what's her name? The little girl
Oh,
manager.
Mrs. Wong.
Mrs. Wong answer. And I felt like they sort of answered that in the Miss Cobell episode, that they essentially take children as like fellowships interns and like raise them within the company. So her like fellowship ended and she gets on a bus. So I felt like they did kind of answer, why was there a little girl working there?
Yeah. But I also saw something on TikTok, and I haven't gone back to explore it myself. So again, be careful with TikTok theories.
TikTok can have some wild theories.
Mrs. Wong is not one of these, but I do think we have one of these on the show that hasn't been revealed to us yet.
Ooh.
It was noted in, and I can't remember, I think Mr. Drummond may have said it, that somebody is one of, Cobell said it as they were going into the birthing retreat, because how they tricked to get in there was just, Devin pretended to be pregnant, and she said it's one of Jamie's, as in Jamie Egan, as in he gets women pregnant on a regular basis.
Ew.
I think Cobell
daughter
is actually his daughter.
Ooh.
And that's why there's even maybe more rub against Helly and Cobell. Now, maybe that's not
well, we got one
true,
episode left.
but we know that from the Cobell episode last week that the mother was devout. Yeah. But the sister hates.
Yeah. So what do you think, though? What do you think is going to happen in the finale? Finale predictions.
Oh, I have no
now.
idea. I
want to know where the goat people come into play with everything.
You're not going to find anything else out about the goat people.
What is going on there?
A lot of people on the internet seem to think, and I think this is a reasonable way to go, but I also think it just could be completely, utterly useless. I think a lot of people seem to think that Gemma is an experiment to try and see if they can transplant the consciousness of a dead Egan into a live person and bring them back. The manner in which they're taking to get there seems completely ludicrous.
Well, the final episode is called Cold Harbor.
And we've been building to that all season. I don't know what's going to happen, because I couldn't.
But I'm excited
because like last season, I couldn't have told you. I couldn't have expected what they ended up dropping on us last season.
But I did, though. With Helly. I did. I never trust anybody.
The greatest of all time.
I'm right, unlike the selection committee for March Madness.
And we completed our conversation about Severance in episode 99, Peanut Butter Egg Drama.
Too bad they can't sever themselves to listen to the parts of the podcast they don't know. All right, Severance, season 2 finale. But let's just go with first reaction. I'm going to go with, and this is going to sound extreme, I'm not talking about series finales, because that's a whole different ballgame to navigate a series finale. Season finales in general, maybe even just an episode of TV in general, best thing I've ever watched.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I thought they would have a hard time topping Severance season 1's finale, and in a completely different way. They just blew it completely out of the water.
The season 1 finale was still amazing, but this just elevated it. The whole episode, and it was a long episode, right? Like, what was the runtime on it?
But an hour 17. I would sever myself.
I thought you said it was an hour 40. Oh, so it wasn't an hour 40. It was an hour 17.
No, hour 17. I would sever myself just to be able to watch Severance season 1 and season 2 again for the first time.
Then you'd have your two different people.
Yeah, and you know what? I wouldn't feel guilt like the other people do, because my innie, all he does is watch Severance all the time and have snacks. Like, what a time that would be.
That would be pretty cool.
Unlike some of the other innies that have
like maybe last weekend, I was like, can I sever myself to go to the dentist?
So
please.
Yeah. I honestly, I don't know even how to begin to break that episode down, because there was so much going on in there. And it didn't feel long. Like it did not feel like a long episode of television.
The whole episode, I was on edge, but in a good way. Like, it was almost like I was holding my breath. I was just so much anticipation. It delivered. It had everything. So we'll just go ahead and start off. It kind of begins, at least the most memorable scene sticks out, where we have Mark at the cabin. And the cabin is one of like this, where they bring people that are severed to give birth. So that's how they were able to get Mark S and Mark Scout like intermixed, and they basically pulled a Parks and Rec, like where Ron Swanson recorded a video of himself when he was back with Tammy too, and be like, this means you've fallen for that evil woman again. But they basically were able to, the Innie and the Outie Mark were able to communicate. And I absolutely loved everything about that scene. What about you?
Yeah, it felt like the writing felt natural. You felt both of the characters. You could see the difference in the two characters.
That they're
how
two
they were
different
interacting.
people.
He was using a camcorder
Yeah.
to record messages back and forth. But as the scene went on, they started cutting faster and faster and faster to the point where it felt like they were just talking to
Like
each other
rapid
in the
fire.
same room from our perspective.
And it really did feel like, even though they are the same body person, they are two different people with two different experiences, which really is the whole point that Severance is trying to drive home with the Innies and Outies. And I have to say, I knew Outie Mark was cooked. The moment so basically he's telling him about like why it's so important if he do this so he can be reunited with Gemma. And he's like, oh, I see. And the way he talked to Annie Mark was just so like the way you talk to a child. He was like so condescending. He's like, well, I hear you found love down there with what's her name, Helena?
Yeah.
And it reminded me of the episode where Outie Mark was at the bar and Helena came up to him and was talking about Gemma, and she's like, oh, right, Hannah.
Yeah, the same condescension.
The same condescension.
And it's to show you the
put Mark off.
class markers that this show is trying to point out to you.
Yes.
And it was really well done when you put it together with those earlier scenes from the show.
Absolutely. And we are rooting, obviously, for both versions of Mark's. Like, we feel for both of their stories. But it was just in that moment you see that Outie Mark, had that same amount of like being condescending and probably didn't even realize it because he is still not really thinking of his Annie as a person.
No.
Which was like the whole theme of it. And our boy Dylan, I think his Outie is the only one so far to see his Annie as truly
Yes, I agree.
a person. Yep. Because let's go ahead and get to that scene. Another fantastic scene. When we last left off, Annie Dylan was so upset about what happened and where he can't see like his Outie wife anymore that he wanted to terminate. And I guess your Outie has to agree with that. So he comes back and he's like, oh, so he's not going to let me do it. And Mr. Milkcheck delivers him the letter that Outie Dylan wrote, and I don't know what he had to go prepare for his. Basically, he needs to be the halftime show performance.
We'll get to that in a second.
He had to go prep, so he lays the letter down, sprints out of the room, and for people that don't think Severance is funny, it's little moments of physical comedy like that.
I think Severance is really funny in a dark way. But I think Severance is very funny.
Were you expecting him to lay the letter down and turn around and sprint?
No, that was kind of out of left field. But
my man's had rehearsal.
Yeah.
What can I say? But that letter from Outie Dylan was basically like, first off, F you. I thought that was funny. But then he was like, you do what you got to do. And
yeah.
I feel like that's just what a good guy Dylan is all around.
Yeah, before we go on, we didn't get any Bert or any Irving in this episode. I don't think that's to suggest that is gone, like that Irving's never coming back, but because we still never found out who he was talking to.
Yeah.
We just didn't get that payoff in this episode. That's probably a season 3 thing.
There's still lots of stuff to answer about his character, like because he was the one that was drawing the door. Why was Outie Irving drawing the door? There's still a lot of unanswered stuff with him, and I think, like you said, that could be for season 3. So we got Ms. Cobell. She was with Devin and Mark trying. We assume that they're gonna help with the plan on the outside. Do you think Ms. Cobell is done, or is she still trying to do something with this and work her way back in, bring a new era of Kier, a new era of Lumen?
I think Cobell's ultimate role in the show will be villain.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that in this season, because of how Lumen treated her at the end of season 1, pegging basically all the problems on her, she turned heel not turned heel, but turned good for the selfish purpose of pushing her forward. Yeah. And so
was it even good ultimately?
Yeah, ultimately next season I think she will turn back.
I think her character makes so much more sense now that we had her background episode and we found out that they are taking, literal children, or why she is that way. I think ultimately she was doing this to kind of stick it to him, and so that she can use it as a power play.
Correct. Yeah, I believe so. In fact,
and I don't think Devin should trust her.
Yeah. So, and for all we know, Gemma gets out We'll get to that in a minute. But
Yeah.
for all we know, Devin and Miss Cobell are waiting out in the parking lot to pick her up.
Yeah.
And for all we know, Cobell turns right back around and said, "Look
Yeah.
what I caught." I don't think it's going to go down that way, but it could.
All right. So we have Mark, Mark does agree that he's going to go back in to Lumen to go to work, or Audi Mark does, and is just going to trust that. Even though he's like, I don't know, there was that little conversation about it, like, do you believe me? Like the no, that part. But whatever be the case, Audi Mark's going to show up to work, hope that Any Mark goes with the plan. So we've got Any Mark completing Cold Harbor, which we found out that basically Cold Harbor, each time they put numbers in the little box, that's another like kind of personality, another Any of Gemma.
It's unclear still what they're testing in this case. It's obvious that this isn't the first person they've done these tests with before.
Yeah.
This is another step in whatever their ultimate goal is, which is a back seat ultimately.
And it's a good thing you said that, because like the scientist lady that was kind of working with Gemma, she runs out at one point when everything's going down and she's like, it's the freaking husband. Makes me think definitely that this is not the first couple that they've done something like this with. So we got Mark, we've got Helly, we assume it's Helly with him, and they're talking about, and Helly's down to go with the plan.
Yeah.
But Helly does say something very, like, she's kind of encouraging Any Mark to go in with the plan, to go forward, get Gemma out, and she basically says, I'm her.
Yeah, she says, I'm her, and what I took that is
Helly.
that I'm never going to be what you want, because they will not put her back down here.
Like, Helena's ultimately a part of me. That's kind of how I interpreted that too, because we had her daddy say that she, he saw more Egan in her than he did her outer counterpart, I guess. So all the while this is going on, we have Mark complete it. At one point, I'm like, okay, it's completed. Why aren't we running off with a plan?
The greatest scene
ever
in television
Cinema.
history takes place.
Can we please get him, Mr. Milchek, to perform for the Super Bowl halftime show?
So a marching band just shows up in the
an
severed
entire
floor
severed marching
and just
band
starts marching down the hallways towards him once he finishes it, and comes into the room. Even what's his face hears it from wherever he's at.
First, you missed off how we came out here with that like doll of
the Montauk.
of Egan, and who was definitely messing with him. What were you saying?
I said Montauk instead of monologue.
Oh, so he's got like this like statue guy who's ever doing the voice of it. With, I'm assuming that'd be Mr. Drummond.
That's what it sounded
was
like.
Definitely trying to screw with Milchek, and Milchek wasn't having it. My man's was ready to dance again. So we didn't get a waffle party this season, but we did get the most extraordinary dance song number I've ever seen in the history of television. And I'm just sad that it got cut short in a way.
It got cut short.
I want to see the whole thing.
Helly goes and grabs Milchek's radio and runs into the bathroom to distract him, giving Mark the chance to run off and try and get on to the next floor down, which is where Gemma is being held. And
my man's Dylan shows up.
Shows in.
Just in the nick of time.
Comes in the nick of time, just like in season 1. Helps keep Milchek.
Didn't he like shove the vending machine in front of it?
In there and saves the day. Mark.
And you guys, Dylan, Daniel is usually the type of person where he has his like sports watching stance where he'll sit on the edge of the couch and he starts to pace. But when it comes to shows, he's typically not a shouter, not an animated person. And when I tell you, we're watching this and Daniel rises off the couch, fist in air, and goes, yes! In the middle of it when Dylan showed up. It was great. Because you don't react, even to your beloved Star Trek, you don't react like that when you watch TV or much. Whereas I'm like, pause the TV, I must process this, and I dramatically lay my head back. You were full-blown excited, and I love the rare moments where I get better than, it was fine.
All I've heard from this is that you're more dramatic than me, so I'm going to move forward.
Shocker.
Mark makes it to the door. He has a brief mix-up with Mr. Drummond, and with the help of Brienne of Tarth. Don't tell me that wasn't Brienne of Tarth just severed onto the severed floor.
The fact that I've seen her, Gwendolyn Christie, beat up 2 men on a TV show, 2 different shows, is just chef's kiss.
So he gets down to the floor where Gemma is at.
You're not even mentioning the goat part?
I don't know what to make of the goats. All I can think of is they sacrifice a goat each time an Any dies.
But
dies
she was
in
so
air
happy
quotes.
that she didn't have to
But
sacrifice
she was
her
happy
kid.
not to have to do it. So Mark makes it down to the floor where Jim is being held. He chases off the lady, who says it's the spouse or the husband or whatever she said.
Yeah, spouse. I think that's what she said.
Gets Gemma out of the weird room with the Cold Harbor room.
And Gemma doesn't know that that's Mark at this point. That's the thing. They have her in there assembling their crib that they tried to build in the Gemma-focused episode that's supposed to be for their unborn child. Yeah. And this is what I felt was so compelling, is that she doesn't know anything about him. And this is still... which Mark is this right now?
I forgot to say it. So when he gets down to the lower floor through the black door, it goes back to Outie Mark.
Yes. But she doesn't know Mark at all at this point. Not any Mark, not Outie Mark. She doesn't know who she is. He still convinces her to get out of that room.
She trusts him more than she trusts the voice and the voice that's speaking. When she comes out of the room, finally for the first time in the series, up to this date, we see Mark meets Gemma again for a brief moment.
And it was so beautiful, like such a moment of passion, happiness, joy, like not like shock. It was a gorgeous moment only to be shattered instantly. They get in the elevator and suddenly they both turn into their severed floor things where she's Miss Casey again.
Yep.
And he is Mark S. And the acting was incredible with those.
Well, because they were mid-kiss as the elevator's going up. And the ding goes off, and they both switch over, and you could the actors did such a good job of being like, all of a sudden be like, oh, I've just woken up kissing this person that I really don't know very well.
I feel like Miss Casey personality, though, was, you know what? I've done well. So.
They run to the door.
Yep.
Miss Casey gets out the door and turns back into Gemma, and Any Mark is standing there, and suddenly he starts to hesitate. And then Helly comes around the corner. And then slowly he turns and goes with Helly. And you're latch onto this and you're gonna talk about it for a million years. So I'll just say it. Helly and Mark go to run off, but before she does, Helly gives Gemma some kind of look.
A look.
And then they leave because there's a window in the door.
It looked to me like Helly was giving a bit of a smirk, but maybe rewatching it, I've zoomed in on her face. And it still looks like a little smirk to me. Maybe not quite as smirky as Helena could have been, but just she gives her a look. And I think that it could have easily been interpreted that was Helena. The actress has come out since that plays Helena and said that it's not. And they've kind of and the reason why even I was questioning, I was like, Helly was never cruel. The fact that they gave that look, but one of the main things why I was questioning, even though she gave the look, it was weird, and I was like, is it really going to be Helena? That would be a repeat of season 1, and I think based off of interviews, going back, rewatching the scene ad nauseum, I think that you can justify that it was Helly, but Helly and Mark both realizing that they are, while they have those counterparts, they have a life to live as Annie's, and I think part of Helly being like, I'm her, also was maybe her dad got in her head a little bit about you have more Egan in you, and maybe that doesn't mean to use the Egan for bad, but she realized that she does have some power. Yeah. So I don't know. I think the look was confusing. I think it was done intentionally to mislead viewers.
I think it was very intentional. I bet they spent a lot of time getting that look right.
Yeah, because that was the main thing they stressed the whole time, that Helly was never cruel. And I feel like the Helly we have come to know would have insisted that he go ahead and be with Gemma, but at the same time, wouldn't it also be cruel to collectively, you'd be ending Any Mark's life? No matter what he said about the reintegration, them coming back together, and I think Any Mark in that moment made the most moral choice he could do. He didn't let Gemma die. He assumes that she's going to go to safety, but he knew if he walked through that door, he was never going to get to see his love or his team or his friends again. And he did make that choice for himself. So I think for me, as obviously a married person, I felt Gemma's pain so much, but I also understand why Any Mark made the choice he did. What do you think?
Do you think that if Helly hadn't have showed up there at that last moment, he would have still made that choice, or do you think he would have went out the door?
I don't know. Honestly, I think he might have still chosen to go find Helly.
Because that's my thinking is like I like that Mark. I agree with you that Mark made a decision for himself for the first time ever, because it was finally a time he got to choose. My only concern is, did his choice get taken away a little bit by Helly showing up there at the last minute? Was she being kind of selfish and making her own choice?
I don't know, because I think we saw that he was still conflicted about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And about, he knew that he'd be collectively, no matter what Mark Scout said about reintegration, he still knew, he knew the writing on the wall and the way he was spoken to. I think it definitely helped him make the choice to go with Helly, but I don't know. His judgment could have been clouded in that moment.
So
I think he did prioritize getting Gemma to safety. And then one of the other things that I noticed, and a lot of fans were like, Gemma was told by the one dude that, like, when she was asking about Mark, that Mark had moved on.
Right.
And we all thought that that in that moment that Gemma had no idea that Mark was severed, and that made it even more painful and worse. But since then, the actress who plays Gemma, I believe, has come out and said that she realized that Mark was severed, but she still kept trying to scream to get him to come to her. So these are just going by what the actors are saying with the roles they were given.
I take that at its face value from the actors, but I also, at the end of the day, with season 3 not being written yet, the writers could change that to, like, that's the stuff that the actor has in their mind when they're trying to act the scene, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that that's how it's going to be.
Well, I think in the case of Helly, that she was told that it was Helly, like from what she said in an interview.
And that's important. And I don't doubt that the actress that plays Gemma was told that as well.
Regardless,
but
so painful.
Yeah, they could change
she
it. Is what I'm saying.
She suffered so much. They had that brief moment of happiness, and I keep seeing, it's a funny thing because I keep seeing like ship wars, and I'm like, or people that are so mad at any Mark for the choice he made, and I'm like, you guys missed the entire point of the whole season in the show.
Just a bunch of outies
are different people, and that while they are like as one, it's the innies, like the moral, the ethical dilemma of what we're doing. And if you watched this finale and you were like, well, we learned nothing about Lumen, I'm not sure we're ever gonna.
That's not what this show's about.
That's not the point.
That's not what the show's about.
And we're not trying to say that to sound like elitist or something, because I've seen some people criticize Severance fans for like coming off that way.
The show's ultimately about, like, I mean, really deeply down to it, it's about the nature of, who you are as a person, what makes you you, but it's also a commentary on our current work culture here in this country and how employers view their employees and all those kind of things.
And like I was saying, that a lot of people have criticized Severance fans for saying stuff like that we're smarter than everybody else or something like that. And I don't think that's the case.
I mean,
I don't think Daniel, I don't think that's what, like, if you're watching the show straight up for a mystery, you're not going to get like the mystery that you're wanting, because I'm not sure you ever know about Lumen. But like what Daniel was saying, it's so much more than that. And I think it's a really good lens on how that, plays out. And any show, again, we'll get in the White Lotus in a minute. Any show has fans that gatekeep and think they're the smartest ones on the universe. Yeah. So don't let that be a reason to stop you from watching this show. It's really good. No. Even though we've spoiled everything. If you're like, I don't care, I'm never going to watch Severance, and you've heard us talk, trust me,
what are you doing here?
Watching it's going to be even better. Who would you have gone with? Because if you say you're any, knowing that I'm your outie wife, I will. Oh my gosh!
This is a trap question that wives are asking their husbands after this episode, and I will not be a party to it.
Just say you'd pick me.
I'd pick you. Who would you pick?
You.
Yeah, I don't believe that for a second. So, anyways, Mark and Helly turn the corner, run off down the hallway into whatever in the world they're going to be doing, and then the episode ends.
Well, do we like how the season began of Severance of Mark running, trying to find Gemma, and then it ended with him running away from Gemma?
Yeah.
I think, and I've seen criticism that are like, what do Mark and Helly think's going to happen, that they're running away? What does he think's going to happen? No, that's, again, not the point. It's that moment of, I'm going to spend if I'm going to like live, I'm going to spend my last few moments with somebody I love and care about deeply, and see what happens that way.
Yeah. So, anyways, I'm ready to call it right now. I don't need any further debate. I don't need any further conversation. Severance is the best thing going.
Over the Bear?
Over the Bear.
And you're not going to wait till you see the Bear season 4?
Well, the Bear season 4 might be the last season of the Bear.
Yeah.
And if it is, it doesn't matter anyway.
And that's why I can't pick Hacks, right?
That's why I'm saying it now, before the Bear season 4 comes out, that this is, for me, taking the place of the Bear as the best thing going.
And that's why I can't pick Hacks, though, correct? Because you can't have the last. It's got to be a show with knowing that we're going to have ongoing seasons.
Yeah, correct.
I think I'm going to tend to agree with you for now. I got to wait and see what comes down the pipe, because if I can't pick Hacks because it's ending, and I feel like while I know I'm getting more of the White Lotus is a hard call for that, because each season and cast and story is different.
Yeah. With
some remaining, through points connected. And while again, I liked season 2 of The White Lotus, I'm a season 1 purist, and it would not have been in my pick, but season 3 is knocking it out of the park so far. But I feel like that's one I can't. How do you feel about putting? I know you said Severance, but just in terms of a show like The White Lotus that's so different, do you think that even can go in that category?
I think you could make the case for something like that, but I think the reason you put behind it is that you just didn't. Season 2 wasn't as good for you as the first and what we're looking at here in the third. So
see, I just feel like you can't, because that's one of the things that I like so much about shows is character growth and development, and each season of The White Lotus is different. So that's why I would not put it in a category to be the best thing going, because it's always going to be different.
I understand that logic. It makes perfect sense to me.
So circling back before we get into The White Lotus, about Severance, the music in the ending credits was also chef's kiss, no notes.
Before we even get to the music at the end of the episode, Milchek's entrance music from the Bulls intro music, and then the band playing some really intense music, just making the entire scene so much more intense because they kept the band music going the entire time. And then that song there at the end, which I saw somebody on TikTok say it was a reference from another movie. That's how that movie ended, but I don't know what the movie is. It's like an
nice.
older.
Great. We all know a lot from what you just said.
I think it might be The Graduate from
Okay, that would make sense, because I have seen a lot of pictures of. Is it Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate? Of The Graduate with him, and because he ends up choosing the daughter, right?
Right.
Not Mrs. Robinson. I've never seen that movie
that's correct.
either. And I've been seeing that image with Helly and Mark S.
Okay,
side
that's
by
probably
side.
where it's from then. Yeah.
Context clues, baby.
It was, like you said, every element from the cinematography to the music to the acting to the script to whatever set design. It was a perfect season finale. It was a perfect television episode, in my opinion. I don't rank them, but if I was giving anything a 10 out of 10, it would be season 2 finale of Severance.
I saw something that was oh my gosh, I hated the end of that finale, but I absolutely loved it. Yeah. And it was yes, same. We felt the pain, but it was so good. So season 3, do you think Mr. Milchek's going to crash out, or am I going to get some more boogieing from my dude, some little dance moves?
Oh, I think they'll have him dance again, just because now that's the expectation from the fans. We have to have a Milchek dance every season.
Where do we go from?
I don't know where we go. I didn't when I would think about where are we going with season 2 before we got to season 2. Nothing that happened ever crossed my mind as the possibilities. And to be honest, it's really nice as somebody who sits around and thinks about what's possibly going to happen in these shows.
I love it when a show
and
can
those
get me.
Things happen usually. It's really nice to not know, and I'm just going to let myself not know. I'm not going to go read theories. I'm not going to go do all the stuff I would normally do for other shows. I'm just going to let them writers cook and watch what they have.
Well, I think
hopefully not 3 years from now.
I think at the end of season 1, you still had the whole Innie versus Audi train of thought, but there was still so much focus on the mystery of Lumen.
Yeah.
And season 2 just flipped that and was no, this isn't what this show is about. I think that they're going to have to figure out some different, they were able to justify how we could see Helly again by he needs to complete Cold Harbor. We got to put her back down there. I'm not sure how we're going to get around, because if I'm Audi Mark, I'm not going back in there if they've managed to get me out of there after what Mark S did. So we're going to have to, and you know what? I think they can do it. I trust the team of writers. I just, like Ben Stiller said, that we don't have to wait as long.
Yeah, I hope it's not 3 years.
And that is it for Severance Season 2 Supercut. And we are looking forward to Season 3. We hope you are too. And we'll see you next week.